Hey, sleep-deprived people. Tonight we begin our slow descent into the icy quiet of medieval life, not as a noble, sipping warm wine by a roaring fire, but as a tired, slightly damp peasant, just trying not to freeze before sunrise. You wake up in the middle of the night, or maybe it's early morning. Hard to say. The sky's still black outside, and the wind slips through the cracks in the wall, soft, steady, and cruel. Your breath hangs in the air, a faint puff, then gone. It's cold. Not bundle up cold, real cold, the kind that settles in your bones and makes your teeth ache. You pull the blanket up higher, but your feet are still sticking out. There's always a gap. Somewhere nearby, something scratches behind the wall. Rat? Chicken? Honestly, it's not your problem right now. You're too frozen to care. You're lying in a cottage made of sticks, mud, and blind optimism. The thatched roof sags under a layer of snow. The walls sweat when the fire goes out. You've shoved hay into every crevice you could find, but the wind still finds its way in. The fire's out. It burned low hours ago. All that's left is a pile of ash and the faint smell of smoke clinging to everything: your clothes, your hair, your lungs. You shift a little. The bed groans. It's not just your bed, though. It's everyone's. 5 people, maybe 6 crammed into one lumpy mattress. Someone snores. Someone breathes through their mouth. Someone else mutters in their sleep. You curl toward the edge, clutching your corner of the blanket. It smells like wool and onions and something faintly sour. Probably the goat. Beds aren't for comfort. They're for survival. You pile in together because shared body heat is your only defense. Pillows don't exist here. You've got a bundle of straw under your head, and whatever insect decided to crawl in with it. No chimney either. Just a fire pit near the center of the room. When it's lit, the smoke has nowhere to go. It hovers in the air, drifts up, stings your eyes. Eventually, it leaks out through the thatch. You learn not to cough. You just breathe shallow. Sleep doesn't come all at once. Back then, folks had something called first sleep and second sleep. You doze off early, wake for a bit in the middle of the night, then drift back down. Maybe you pray. Maybe you sit quietly. Maybe you lie there, wondering when spring will come. Historians still debate whether this sleep pattern helped people rest better or just made them even more exhausted. Either way, it was normal. And while you lie still wrapped in scratchy wool and stale air, you listen. For wind, for footsteps, for something worse. The woods aren't far. In winters like this, wolves get bold. They prowl close. You've heard them before? Low howls across the fields. Eyes in the dark. If you forgot to bar the door, it's already too late. You nudge your foot across the floor, feeling for the wood beam. It's in place. Outside, it's frozen earth and bare trees. Inside, it's smoke, breath, and the faint creak of old wood settling. Someone shifts beside you, elbow to the ribs. You pretend to sleep. There's a hot stone wrapped in cloth at your feet. Or there was. Now it's just cold. It helped for an hour. Not much more. Warmth isn't expected here. Not real warmth. You dream of it sometimes, but only just. This winter, it's not about comfort. It's about endurance. You do what you can. Before bed, someone stuffed straw into the window cracks. Someone else patched a draft near the floor. It helps a little. Tomorrow, you'll get up before the sun. Fetch icy water. Break up frozen turnips. Muck the stalls. But right now, you lie still staring into the dark, counting how many nights are left until the thaw. You're alive. You're not frozen. You're not alone. That's something. You sit up slow. The cold hits your skin before you even move the blanket. The fire's long gone. Your breath is visible, the kind of cold that makes your nose sting and your joints lock up before your feet even touch the ground. You hesitate. You know the second you throw that blanket back, there's no going back. You slide your feet out anyway. The dirt floor feels like frozen stone. You wince, curl your toes, then try again. No use pretending it's going to get better by waiting. You stand. Your shoulders ache from the way you were curled up all night, knees to chest, arms wrapped around your stomach. It's not the most ergonomic sleeping position, but it's the only one that fits under that short, scratchy blanket. Your eyes adjust to the dark. There's a faint gray light coming through the cracks in the shutters. Outside, the frost is probably thick enough to skate on the water trough. You feel around for your shirt. It's still damp from yesterday's snow. You shake it out and pull it over your head. It smells like smoke, sweat, and damp wool. You barely flinch. Then comes the layering. Second shirt, slightly stiffer, slightly less awful. You find your breeches hanging from a nail near the hearth. They're stiff with cold. You slap them a few times to loosen them up, then pull them on fast like ripping off a bandage in reverse. Then the hose, long, itchy wool tubes with more holes than thread. You patch them when you can, but there's only so much you can do with string and stubbornness. Next, the tunic. It's heavier than your shirts, patched at the elbows, frayed at the cuffs. You cinch a rope around your waist not for fashion, just to keep the wind from shooting straight up your ribs. You find your shoes under the bench, stiff leather, cracked. You rub a handful of straw between your palms and shove it into the toes for insulation. It doesn't work that well, but it's better than stepping barefoot through frost. You wrap a scarf around your neck, just a length of old linen. It smells like the barn. You don't ask questions. You tie it tight. And then the cloak. It's heavy, coarse, dark brown, though it's picked up a few other colors over the years: soot, grease, spilled soup. You toss it over your shoulders and pull up the hood. Headwear is non-negotiable. You've got a coif, just a linen cap that ties under your chin, and over that, a wool hood that drapes over your shoulders. It makes you look like you're headed to rob a caravan. You're not. You're just trying to keep your ears. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants layered out of necessity or tradition, but when it's 15 degrees inside your house, the answer feels pretty clear. You glance around the cottage. Everyone else is still bundled under the shared bedding. You can barely see their faces, just shapes under wool and straw, breathing slow, steam rising from their mouths. Someone coughs. Inside the barn, the goat stares at you like it expected breakfast 10 minutes ago. The chickens grumble in their box. You mutter something not quite polite and pour the water into the trough. You trudge back across the yard. The wind's picked up. It cuts through the cloak, through the scarf, through everything. You hunch forward and push through. Back inside the cottage, you set the pail by the hearth. The cold follows you in like a shadow. You sit on the bench and pull your hands into your sleeves. Your fingers feel like wood. The clothes help, but not enough. Nothing's truly warm. It's about piling on what you can and hoping for the best. Most peasants didn't own more than a few items of clothing, 2 tunics at most, maybe a cloak if they were lucky. Hand-me-downs were common. You wore what your older brother outgrew, what your cousin left behind, what your father died in. No one asked questions. You didn't have the luxury. And when something wore out, It didn't go in the trash. It became part of a blanket, a rag, a new patch. Even bits of ruined cloth got twisted into stuffing for shoes or used to plug holes in the roof. That cloak you're wearing might be belonged to someone else 3 winters ago. You don't know. Doesn't matter. It's yours now. You learned to read clothes like a story, a stitched tear, a mismatched button, a burn mark from getting too close to the fire. It all means something. And out here, in the dead of winter, every layer counts. Every loop of rope, every length of wool, every borrowed cap, it's what stands between you and frostbite. Fashion? That's for nobles. Your outfit's built for survival. And this morning, just like every winter morning, you made it through getting dressed without crying. That's a win. You look down at your hands, red, chapped, stiff, and tuck them under your arms for warmth. You sit for just a second before the next chore starts. No time to rest. No such thing as warm. Just movement, layers, and grit. That's winter. You blink awake to smoke in your eyes. Again, it's not fire, not danger. Just the usual morning routine inside a one-room cottage without a chimney. The kind of smoke that doesn't billow, it just hangs. It floats low, seeps into your nostrils, clings to your skin. You cough once, a dry, shallow cough, and wave your hand in front of your face like it might help. It doesn't. Somebody stirred the fire early. Maybe you. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. The important part is that there's still a fire, which means you won't freeze today, at least not immediately. You shuffle over to the hearth, squinting through the gray haze. The embers are glowing barely. You bend down, lips close to the edge, and give a slow, steady breath. The ash shifts. Sparks flicker. You toss on a few sticks, then some twisted straw. A small flame catches, then another. You add a split log. It cracks as it settles into place. The heat spreads out in thin ribbons. Your hands hover over it, soaking up whatever warmth they can. Your knuckles are red and raw, and there's a cut on your thumb you don't remember getting. You sit back on your heels, take a breath, and the smoke rolls into your face. That's life without a chimney. Most peasants didn't have them, not in the 13th century. Chimneys were expensive, complicated, and considered sort of a luxury, like owning a metal pot with no cracks, or a pair of boots that fit. Instead, the smoke just lived here with you. It slipped through the gaps in the roof when it could, or pooled under the rafters when it couldn't. Some homes had a hole in the ceiling, not quite a chimney, but something, and others didn't bother. Yours didn't bother. You've gotten used to it. Sort of. It stings, sure. But after a while, your eyes just water quietly, and you learn to live with it. Historians still debate whether these smoky homes caused long-term health problems, or if people built up a kind of tolerance. Some suggest the constant exposure made respiratory infections worse. Others think the benefits, like fewer bugs and less mold, might have balanced it out. You just know it's annoying, but useful too. Smoke does more than burn your throat. It dries the thatch overhead. It drives off lice and fleas. It helps preserve meat if you hang it just right. And, oddly enough, it keeps some of the stink down. Not all of it. You grab the kettle from its hook and fill it with yesterday's water. You skim off the film of ice floating on top and set the pot back over the flame. It wobbles slightly, but stays upright. You reach for the cloth bag near the hearth full of turnips, onions, maybe a shriveled carrot or two if you're lucky. You toss a few into the pot. Nothing fancy, just root stew. That's breakfast. It'll take a while to boil, so you stir it once and let it sit. You look around. The walls are streaked with soot. It runs in long, crooked lines down the beams. If you press your hand against the wood, it comes away gray. You used to try and clean it. Not anymore. Every time it rains or the snow melts, more stains seep in anyway. You can scrub all morning, and it'll still look like a burnt loaf of bread by nightfall. You step back and sit down on the low bench by the fire. The air's a little clearer this close to the floor. You pull your cloak tighter and rest your elbows on your knees. Your family is starting to stir behind you. A cough, a groan, the sound of straw shifting. Nobody wants to leave the warmth of the blanket pile. Not yet. You tilt your head toward the stew. It's just beginning to bubble. You grab a wooden spoon and give it a quick stir. The steam rises, and with it, more smoke. The spoon is short. The handle cracked last summer when someone sat on it. You sanded down the splintered edge with a rock and kept using it. That's how everything works here. Break it, patch it, keep going. You serve out a few bowls, one for each person. The bowls don't match. Some are chipped, one's just a hollowed out gourd. But they work. You crouch by the hearth again, warming your fingers while you wait for everyone else to join you. The stew smells like wet wood and boiled onions. It's not exactly appetizing, but it's hot, and that counts for a lot. You hold your bowl close, letting the steam drift into your face. It warms your cheeks, your nose, even your eyebrows. You take a bite. It's not bad. It's not good either. It's just food. You eat quietly. Everyone does. The room is filled with the sound of spoons scraping bowls, people clearing their throats, and the fire crackling underneath the weight of another log. There's something comforting in the routine. You've done this every morning for as long as you can remember. You know which plank creaks when someone steps on it. You know which wall leaks when it snows sideways. You know the exact moment the fire starts to catch by the smell, not the sound. It's strange how a smoky, freezing room full of half-asleep people can feel like home. But it does. You step outside for just a moment, bowl in hand. The cold hits you hard, like stepping into a frozen lake. But the air is clear, sharp, honest. You breathe deep. Let the frost settle in your lungs. And for a second, you don't smell smoke. You just smell pine and earth and sky. You finish the last of your stew with a final gulp, then head back inside. The door creaks shut behind you. The smoke wraps around you like an old coat. And you think, yeah, this is winter. You don't love it, but you know how to live through it. The fire's going. Your hands are warmish, and your belly's got just enough turnip stew in it to keep your insides from grumbling. That should be enough to call it a good morning, except now it's time to deal with where and how you slept. You glance over at the sleeping area. It's not a bed. Not really. It's more like a low, creaky wooden platform packed with straw, wool, and a whole lot of limbs. Everyone's still bundled together under the same moth-bitten blanket, all tangled up like laundry in a basket. You slept wedged between your cousin on one side and a goat on the other. You don't remember who kicked you in the ribs during the night, but you're sure it happened. The goat probably slept better than you did. It usually does. The straw mattress, if you can call it that, gave up around 3 winters ago. Now, it's mostly dust, hay, and some stuff you stopped identifying. It smells vaguely like mold, feet, and wet dog. It hasn't been cleaned since, well, probably never. You pick up the corner of the blanket and shake it out. A small puff of dust, or possibly flour, or maybe powdered lice rises into the air. You cough, Fan it away, then stop bothering. This is how you sleep, all together, in one bed, under one cover, in one freezing room. Historians call it the Great Bed, not because it's grand, but because it's shared. Parents, kids, grandparents, maybe a visiting cousin, maybe even a chicken or two on extra cold nights. Nobody had their own room. Nobody had their own mattress. You shared because you had to, because body heat was your only real insulation. And honestly, that wasn't even the weirdest part. People slept in their clothes, full layers, no pajamas, no nightgowns. You climbed in wearing your breeches, your tunic, your socks if you had them, and your hat if you were smart. You pulled the blanket up to your chin and hoped for the best. If someone rolled over and took half the blanket with them, tough luck. You learned to hold on tight. And if you got stuck near the edge, with a draft coming through the wall and a wet spot under the straw, from the time someone knocked over a water jug, well, that was just part of the deal. You sit on the edge now, brushing off crumbs and whatever else found its way into the bed overnight. Something crunches. You decide not to investigate. The straw needs replacing, but good luck finding fresh, dry straw this time of year. You'll probably stuff in more old cloth, maybe some moss if you're desperate. People used all kinds of things: feathers, rushes, even dried leaves. Nothing worked great, but it was better than lying flat on a cold floor. You hear someone stir behind you. Your cousin mumbles something, turns over, and keeps snoring. You envy that. Being able to sleep through the cold like that, that's a gift. You stretch your legs, wincing at the stiffness in your knees. The cold settles into your joints at night and doesn't like to leave. You rotate your shoulders, flex your toes. Everything feels like it needs oil. You fluff up the bed with both hands, which really just means shoving straw back into the corners and patting down the worst of the lumps. Then you flip the blanket back into place and press it flat. Done. If you're wondering about privacy, there isn't any. Not for changing, not for sleeping, not for anything. If someone snored, you all heard it. If someone talked in their sleep, you all knew their secrets by sunrise. If someone had a bad dream and started yelling, good luck going back to sleep after that. You all slept close, and you all woke up close. Literally. Sometimes a piglet wandered in and curled up next to someone. Sometimes the dog stole the warmest spot. Nobody got mad. Warm was warm. And every now and then, the bed wasn't even indoors. If the house was too crowded or the roof was leaking too bad, someone might sleep in the loft, or the barn, or just on the bench by the fire if you could get to it first. You think back to the few times you managed to fall asleep right next to the hearth, with the fire still glowing and your feet practically in the ashes. That was the good spot, the luxury suite. You usually had to fight a sibling for it. Sleeping in a medieval cottage wasn't peaceful. It was survival. You didn't drift off to the sound of gentle wind chimes or a babbling brook. You fell asleep to coughing, scratching, someone whispering a prayer, and the wind trying to blow the door open. And it wasn't just noise, it was the smells too. The stew pot, the unwashed clothes, the smoky walls, someone's feet, the goat's feet. But eventually, you got used to it. People back then weren't soft. They didn't expect peace and quiet. They expected cold feet, snoring neighbors, and a blanket that barely covered your shoulders unless you curled up tight like a snail. You wrap the blanket tighter around your shoulders and glance over at the fire again. Still going. That's good. You can feel the warmth on your face now, the way it radiates from the logs, slow and steady. You lean into it a little, breathing deep. The bed may be a mess. Your back may hurt. Your clothes may feel like sandpaper. But you woke up. You got up. And you're still warm enough to feel your fingers. That's a win. You sit for just a second more, listening to the creak of the roof beams and the sound of your cousin snoring like a mule. It's oddly comforting. Because out here, this is how you rest. In the cold, in the smoke, with a dozen elbows poking your side and a goat breathing in your face. It's not cozy, but it's home. You stand up, cloak still wrapped tight around your shoulders, and glance toward the door. Time to go out there. Not because you want to, because you have to. It's not even light out yet. The sky's still that pale gray blue that feels more like dusk than morning. But the steward from the manor house will be making rounds soon. And if you're not out in the fields when he shows up, you're going to have more to worry about than frostbite. You grab your work gloves, stiff with dried mud, and worse, and pull them on over cracked, swollen knuckles. You flex your fingers until the joints pop, then open the door. The cold doesn't even wait. It rushes in before you step out. You grit your teeth, push forward, and shut it behind you. Your boots hit the frozen earth with a crunch. Out here, everything is still and sharp. The fences sparkle with frost. The sky is clear, too clear a bad sign. Clouds mean snow, sure, but at least they hold in some heat. This kind of clear, it cuts through every layer you've got. You make your way down the path between cottages. Smoke drifts from rooftops in lazy gray streams. You see a few others, like you wrapped in cloaks, heads down, walking slow but steady. No one waves. You just nod, quietly. Everyone knows the drill. At the edge of the village, the land opens up wide, flat, and hard as rock this time of year. The fields aren't growing anything, obviously, but that doesn't mean the work stops. You're here to clear ditches, again. The Lord Steward wants them cleaned before the next thaw, and what the Lord Steward wants gets done. Or someone gets fined. Or worse, you shoulder your spade and start walking the ridge of the frozen trench. Your boots slip on the icy edge, but you catch yourself. The frost has welded everything together. The dirt, the weeds, the stones, one big slab of winter. You jab the blade in anyway. It bounces back like you hit iron. You grunt. Try again. Eventually, you chip away at the edges, breaking loose little pieces of frozen mud and brittle roots. You don't know what purpose it serves. The ditch won't drain until March, but it's not about results. It's about orders. That's the part modern folks miss when they picture medieval peasants. You didn't own your land. You were just borrowing it from someone richer, someone you'd probably never meet. You owed them labor, owed them your mornings, owed them your back. The term was corv, labor unpaid work, required by the manor, in exchange for the right to live on and farm your tiny strip of earth. Historians still debate whether this system crushed peasants under endless duties, or if, in practice, many stewards were more flexible than we assume. You chip away at the ditch, breathing through your mouth to avoid the sting in your nose. Your cheeks are numb. Your fingertips ache inside your gloves. You pause only when your arms start to shake, then go right back to it. After an hour, your toes feel like stones. You stamp them against the ground, hard, just to remind them they exist. A couple others show up with tools. You don't talk much. Maybe a quick grumble about the cold, a snort when someone nearly falls in the ditch. But mostly, you just work. One man brought his teenage son. The boy's face is red, his hands bare. He looks like he wants to cry, but won't let himself. You pass him a chunk of old leather to wrap around his palms. He nods, doesn't say a word. That's how knowledge gets passed out here. Not through lessons, through moments like that. You dig for another hour. At some point, the steward rides by on a horse, bundled up in thick wool, boots clean, cheeks pink, like he's just stepped out of a warm kitchen. He stops, looks down at the trench, then nods. That'll do. Keep it up. Then he rides off. You watch the steam rise from the horse's flanks as it disappears into the distance. You wonder if the animal sleeps in a warmer barn than your house. You keep digging. Eventually, the sun climbs higher. The frost starts to melt in thin streaks across the furrows. Your gloves are wet now. Your sleeves too. The cold seeps in deeper. You stand up straight, stretch your back, and hear it pop. You think about breakfast, the watery turnip stew, already long gone. You think about the hunk of bread you wrapped in cloth before leaving the house. You don't dare stop now, but you can almost taste it. You shift your grip on the spade, step back into the trench, and keep going. That's winter work. You're not building anything glorious. You're not farming yet. You're not harvesting. You're just keeping up with the demands, keeping yourself in good standing, keeping the Lord happy. Because that's the only way to make sure your family stays in that cottage, as smoky, drafty, and overcrowded as it is. You jab the spade in again. This time, the dirt gives a little more easily. The sun's doing its work, bit by bit. You don't feel it yet, but the thaw always starts slow. Just like everything else out here, you're still rubbing your hands near the fire when your cousin stands up, brushes off his cloak, and heads toward the door. You watch as he grabs the empty buckets from where you left them earlier, the ones you'd used to bring water back from the stream. He looks at you. You know that look. "You hauled this morning," he says, voice hoarse. "It'll go now." You nod. You don't argue. You just shift to the left a bit so the fire hits both your palms evenly and try to breathe in slow. But you already know. You're going to have to haul again tomorrow, because by the time the bucket water gets used for stew and the rest goes to washing the little ones or rinsing out the linens with more holes than thread, there's barely enough for the next morning's porridge. And that's assuming the pot doesn't freeze solid overnight again. You glance at the pot now, already back over the fire. It's doing its usual quiet bubbling thing, filling the air with that familiar, rooty steam. Turnip, onion, maybe a hint of parsley if someone was feeling generous. You're not even hungry, but your stomach grumbles anyway. You lean back against the bench and stretch your legs, boots propped against the warmest stone in the hearth. It feels like victory. Even if your socks are damp and your lower back still twitches from earlier. Then comes the knock. 3 firm raps on the door. Not angry, not soft, just business. Your cousin isn't back yet, so you stand. You pull the door open, just wide enough to let in the cold and whoever's standing behind it. It's the beetle. Again, wrapped up in 3 layers of wool and fur, with frost hanging from the tip of his nose and a sour look that says this wasn't his idea either. "Lower field," he mutters, handing you a folded scrap of parchment. "Ox cart tipped in the ditch. Lord wants it cleared before sundown." You glance at the sky, pale gray, going blue. The sun's not even halfway up. He starts to walk off, then turns back. "Bring rope. And someone with a back." You nod. Close the door and stare at the folded paper for a second, like it might catch fire on its own. Of course, the cart tipped. Of course, it's your job. You can almost hear the Lord steward from earlier, riding off all warm and dry, muttering something about peasant reliability. You sigh, loud and sharp. You grab the rope from the corner, the one you used last spring, to drag logs from the tree line, and your thicker gloves. You wrap another scarf around your neck and call for your neighbor's oldest son, who's just barely taller than the spade he carries. 15 minutes later, you're headed down the hill. The field's not far, maybe a quarter mile. But the walk feels longer, with frozen mud underfoot, and the wind pushing at your side like it's got something to prove. When you arrive, the scene is exactly what you pictured. A big, broad ox cart stuck half off the frozen track. One wheel sunk halfway into the ditch you were helping dig just yesterday. The irony isn't lost on you. A few others are already there. One of the older farmhands with a limp, 2 boys from the mill, and old Yorick, who lost a toe last winter and won't stop telling people about it. You nod to them, set your rope down, and take a moment to size up the mess. It's bad. The front axle is tilted just enough to make the whole thing lean like a drunken table. The oxen are calm, chewing frozen hay like nothing's wrong, their breath steaming in slow, rhythmic clouds. You tie off the rope to one side of the cart and motion for the others to do the same. Everyone's quiet focused. This isn't the kind of job you talk through. It's too cold and too heavy, and no one's getting paid. Just survival credit. You all pull together, boots sliding in the dirt, gloves slipping on fraying rope, bodies leaning back with everything they've got. It doesn't budge. You stop, panting. Your shoulders burn. You try again. This time, with more people shifting weight, you hear the creak, not the good kind. The "this might snap in half" kind. Then one of the oxen lets out a deep groan, shifts its stance, and the wheel lifts just enough for the cart to roll a few inches. Everyone cheers. Quietly. Because again, it's winter, and you still have to save your breath. It takes another half hour to finish the job. When it's finally done, you wipe the sweat off your forehead with a frozen sleeve and look around at the others. No one says much, but there's a kind of unspoken nod that moves from person to person. The "we did it" nod. The "we're not useless after all" nod. Then you all start to scatter. You walk home slowly, rope coiled over your shoulder, gloves stiff, breath still curling in little puffs like smoke signals. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants felt pride in their communal labor, or whether it was all just forced obedience masked as duty. But out here, dragging a cart upright in the freezing cold, you don't feel oppressed. You feel necessary. You reach the house just as your cousin returns with fresh water. His face is pink from the wind, nose dripping, fingers trembling. You both laugh, not because anything is funny, but because you're equally miserable, and somehow that helps. You toss the rope aside, pull off your gloves, and hold your hands out to the fire again. It's still going. The pot's still bubbling, and you're still standing. Barely. But still, you're back inside. Your cloak's hanging near the fire now, steaming faintly at the edges. Your gloves are stiff, and your boots squish when you walk, not from water exactly, just cold packed so deep into the leather it might as well be ice. You sit on the bench and stretch your legs toward the hearth. The stone's warm under your feet, and your toes start to tingle sharp little stabs, like they're waking up angry. You're inside, but the cold's still hanging on. It clings to your sleeves, to the back of your neck, to that one spot between your shoulders that never warms up, no matter how close you get to the fire. One of the kids leans against you, doesn't say anything, just slumps into your side, small and quiet and bone-tired. You don't move. You barely notice, really. You're too focused on coaxing your fingers back to life. Across the room, your cousin's stirring the pot. The stew's nearly done. You can smell its sharp onions, boiled roots, and a little something smoky from the bottom of the pot where it caught. He grabs a ladle and starts filling bowls. That's when it happens. A knock. No, not a knock. A bang. 3 fast thuds on the door. You freeze. Your cousin freezes. Even the kid beside you lifts his head. There's only one person who knocks like that. Your cousin moves first. He opens the door, just a crack. Standing there, hunched in a thick gray cloak, is old Will from 3 doors down. He looks like he ran the whole way, cheeks red, breath steaming, boots crusted in frozen mud. "The Reeves coming?" he says, barely above a whisper. Already fined the Millers for not showing up to the ditch clearing. He's checking every house. Your cousin closes the door slowly, looks at you, and nods. You're already pulling your gloves back on. This isn't your first time. You grab your cloak, still damp, throw it around your shoulders, and step back outside without a word. You don't have a plan yet. Doesn't matter. You'll find something to look busy with. You have to. Because the Reeve, he doesn't care about your sore back or frozen boots. He cares about who's working, or at least who looks like they are. You cut around the back of the house and head toward the fence. Last summer, a few panels blew loose during a storm and never got fixed right. You'd planned to mend them in spring, but right now, they're the best excuse you've got. You grab a hammer and a handful of bent nails from the shed, drop to one knee beside the broken post, and start working fast, not sloppy, but fast enough that anyone watching would believe you've been at it all morning. Your breath huffs in quick bursts. The wood creaks as you shift it back into place. Every nail you drive in sings a little ping that echoes across the frost. That's when you hear it, the soft jingle of tack, the slow, heavy step of a horse. You don't look up. You just keep hammering. The Reeves' voice is always the same, dry, low, a little bored. "Fence work?" You nod without turning. "Storm knocked it loose," you say. "Fixing it before the animals get out." A long pause. Then, not many animals left this time of year. You finally glance up. Hez sitting straight-backed on a thick, stocky mare, wrapped in fur and wool, face half hidden behind a scarf. He's got a small ledger tucked under one arm. You imagine your name's in it, or could be, depending on how this conversation goes. You lift another nail, drive it in slow. "Trying to stay ahead," you say. He watches you work for a few more seconds, then sniffs, turns his horse, and heads toward the next cottage. You don't relax until the hoofbeats fade out completely. Then you let the hammer drop into the snow and rest your hands on your knees. You got lucky. Historians describe Reeves as local enforcers of manorial law, usually chosen from among the peasants themselves. That should have made them more sympathetic. Sometimes it did. Other times, it just made them more eager to prove their loyalty to the Lord by cracking down on their neighbors. You walk back to the cottage slowly, rolling your shoulders, trying to shake out the tension. Your cousin's waiting by the door. "See him?" he asks. You nod. "He saw me working the fence." Your cousin smirks. "Then, well, call that rent paid for the day." Inside, the kids are already eating. One of them hands you a bowl, hot, steaming, heavy with what might be a small piece of dried meat floating near the bottom. You sit down and wrap your fingers around it like it's gold. You eat slow, not because you're trying to savor it, but because your hands are still stiff and the heat feels good between your palms. You lean back against the wall, eyes half closed, bowl in your lap, and think about how many more days of this winter you've got ahead of you. You don't want to count. You just want to stay warm for 5 more minutes. That's enough for now. The fire's nothing more than a soft orange puddle now, flickering low beneath a crust of half-spent logs. The room smells like turnips, smoke, wet wool, and something faintly barnyard that no one dares mention out loud. You're on the bench again, lying on your side, the blanket drawn up tight over your shoulders and tucked under your chin like a child. One of the kids has wedged a foot against your hip in their sleep, but you're too tired to care or move. Your back is stiff, your socks are damp, your skin itches from dried sweat. But for the first time all day, you're horizontal. It's quiet, a kind of quiet that only winter can make. Thick, pressed down, almost heavy. And then the wind finds a way back in. You feel it first on the back of your neck, that sneaky cold draft slipping through a crack near the rafters. You shift positions. Doesn't help. It snakes across your ankles next, finds your knees, threads its way beneath the blanket like it's got a vendetta against sleep itself. You sigh. Not loud, just long. Across the room, your cousin's still awake. You can't see him in the dark, but you can hear the way he exhales that same, I know what you're feeling kind of breath. Then he says it. We need more dung. You laugh. Just once. Short. Dry. Of course we do. He sits up, groaning like his bones are made of stone. You follow him, because once you're thinking about how cold you are, there's no going back to sleep until you fix it. Outside, the wind is even worse, sharper, somehow. It cuts through your tunic like it's nothing. The moonlight reflects off patches of frozen mud around the side of the house as you both trudge toward the heap behind the goat pen. That's where the good stuff lives. You lift the lid off the dung bin, a polite name for what's really just a slumped pile of composted animal waste, straw, ash, and kitchen scraps. You each grab a bundle and head back inside quickly, your arms full of steaming misery. The smell hits first. Even the fire seems to recoil a bit when you step through the door. But necessity doesn't care about dignity or scent. You begin stuffing the mixture into the wall gaps places where the mud daub has flaked away from age and damp, under the windows, between the beams, around the door frame, where the cold always sneaks in like a gossip. Your cousin climbs up on the bench and packs it high under the eaves with a stick, pressing in extra straw for padding. The smell, unmistakable. Even one of the kids rolls over, half asleep, mumbling something about the goats being angry again. You press your hand against a freshly sealed crack and feel nothing. No wind, no draft, just still air. For the first time in days, the house feels like a shelter, not just a box holding in your breath. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants knew anything about insulation, at least formally. There's no written manual, no textbook passed down. But when your life depends on not freezing before sunrise, you figure things out fast. You don't call it insulation. You just call it surviving. You sink back onto the bench. The stink still hangs in the air, sure, but it's already fading. Your nose adjusts fast in winter. Your cousin joins you, cloak dusted in straw, hands coated in ash. Do you think we used enough? He asks, still breathing hard. You nod. I think the goat would be proud. He grins. Rest her soul. You laugh, soft and muffled. That goat, the one who contributed generously to tonight's windproofing effort, met an unfortunate end a few weeks ago after she slipped on frozen steps and took down 2 pails of milk and your cousin's dignity in one loud tumble. She never quite recovered, but her legacy clearly lives on in your walls. You both sit in silence for a while. The fire crackles. The wind mutters outside, but this time it stays there outside. One of the kids starts snoring gently, and the smallest one shifts in their sleep, pulling the blanket over their face like a burrito. You lie back down and let your limbs go heavy. The warmth doesn't hit all at once, but it's there, building, slowly, like tea steeping in cold water. You start to relax. Your cousin shifts next to you and mutters, "If the Reeve comes back tomorrow and smells this, he's going to think we're tanning hides in here." You murmur, "Then maybe hell leave us alone, or charge us a hide tax. Let's not give him ideas." The two of you chuckle in the dark, low, tired, almost wheezing. And then the laughter fades into breathing. Steady. Quiet. You nestle deeper under the blanket, cheek pressed to the scratchy wool, fingers curled near your chest. There's a layer of soot on the inside of your sleeve, and something sticky from the dung packing process stuck to your elbow. But you're warm now. That's all that matters. Tomorrow, you'll have to haul water again. Probably chase down the neighbor's chickens that keep sneaking into your food scraps. You might get summoned to the manor for ditch clearing duty, or have to patch another roof tile, or shovel snow from the path that no one walks except the steward's horse. But right now, you made the wind shut up. That's enough. Morning doesn't really arrive. It just sort of leaks in. Gray light seeps through the cracks between the shutters, soft and slow, like it's unsure whether to bother showing up at all. The fire's gone out again, of course it has, and the room smells like cold ash and yesterday's stew. You open one eye. The blanket's still wrapped around your shoulders, but it's slipped just enough to let the air nip at your collarbone. Your nose is cold. Your toes are colder. Your back feels like someone replaced your spine with a wooden fence post. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake the kid sleeping beside you. Someone's already moving around. You hear the creak of the water bucket, the soft clatter of a ladle, the low whistle of someone pretending to be cheerful before sunrise. It's your cousin. You rub your eyes and look at him. He's already dressed, boots on, cloak fastened, Hez holding a hunk of bread in one hand and a chunk of frozen butter in the other, trying to smear the second onto the first like it's going to work. "Morning," he says, not looking up. You grunt something that technically counts as a greeting. He tosses you a piece of bread. It lands on your lap like a rock. You gnaw on it absently, staring at the hearth. The coals are still faintly warm enough to get something going, if you're fast. You reach for the kindling, hands stiff, knuckles clicking. Outside, you hear voices. Then the slam of a gate. Then a shout. Your cousin walks to the door and cracks it open. You stand and follow him, dragging the blanket around your shoulders like a royal robe you didn't ask for. Outside, the village is stirring. Smoke drifts up from a few chimneys. A pig squeals somewhere off to the left. Someone is chasing a chicken with a bucket and a determined frown. Typical. But the shouting? That's coming from the manor, not angry shouting. Organized shouting. You squint toward the path that winds up to the Lord's Hall, a squat stone rectangle that looks even grimmer in winter. There's a group gathered near the edge of the green, and from here you can make out bits of movement, people lifting sacks, passing baskets, one man waving his arms and pointing at a cart with a broken wheel. Your cousin frowns. Levies? You both say it at the same time. Of course it's levies. You head back inside and start grabbing your gear, your gloves, your patched-up hood, a spare belt for holding tools. By the time you're back outside, someone's already knocking on doors and calling names. Your name's on the list. Lucky you. Turns out the Lords got a shipment of firewood to move before the next storm hits. The carts are ready, the oxen are sluggish, and half the wood's frozen to the ground. Naturally, he's asked for help, by which he means, I've ordered everyone without an excuse to show up immediately. You trudge up the road, boots squelching in fresh slush. The air is thick with chimney smoke, your breath curling out in clouds, your stomach growling even though the bread's still lodged somewhere behind your teeth. When you reach the hall, there's already a pile of timber stacked beside the entrance, rough-cut logs still crusted with frost. A steward hands you a rope and points toward the smaller cart. Yours. You nod. No use arguing. You grab the rope and start heaving wood into the back. It's heavy, awkward. Every log leaves a splinter or bruises your shin. And just as you get the pile steady, the oxen decide they're not in the mood. One of them shifts, the whole cart lurches, and half your load slides off again. You close your eyes for a second. Just breathe. Then start over. It takes all morning to finish. By the time the last cart is packed and sent down the hill, your arms are jelly, your knees ache, and there's a blister blooming on the inside of your thumb. You're too tired to curse. You just sit on a stump, rub your palms together, and let the steam rise off your skin like you're your own campfire. Someone hands you a mug of ale. It's warm. You don't ask how. You just drink. Historians often discuss whether medieval peasants were truly forced into labor, or whether they saw community work like this as part of the social glue, the thing that kept the village running. The truth probably lives somewhere in the middle. You might not want to haul firewood for the Lord, but if it means your roof doesn't collapse when he's deciding whose home to patch next, you go. No one ever said survival was clean. You finish your ale and head home, legs dragging. By the time you reach the cottage, the sun's already dipping low again. Inside, the fire's been relit. A new pot is on. The kids are chasing each other with sticks that used to be spoons. You take your place by the hearth and peel off your gloves. They're torn again. Same spot. You sigh. Your cousin glances over. Lord pay you? You hold up the ale mug. He snorts. Then you're richer than me. You both laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's better than screaming. Tomorrow, it'll be something else. Another task. Another demand. Another way to prove you belong on the list of people worth feeding. But tonight, you've still got a fire, a roof, half a loaf of bread, and a blanket that kind of covers both feet if you curl just right. That's all you need. For now. The next morning doesn't start like a real morning. It just happens. There's no sunrise, no birds, no rooster. Just that persistent gray sky pressing down like a wet sack, and the sound of sleet tapping on the shutters like impatient fingers on a table. You groan as you shift under the blanket, which is once again failing to do its one job. Your feet are cold. Your nose is cold. Your back feels like you spent the night sleeping on a crooked bench, which, let's be honest, you sort of did. Across the room, your cousin's crouched over the hearth, stabbing at the ashes like they owe him money. Any fire left? You ask, voice still crusty with sleep. He shrugs. Some. Barely. Just enough to remind us what heat used to feel like. You drag yourself upright, wrapping the blanket around your shoulders like some medieval version of a defeated superhero. You shuffle over, and the two of you huddle around the smoldering coals. He tosses you a chunk of bread that could double as a weapon. You chew in silence, watching the coals breathe. The sleet taps louder, now joined by a slow, miserable wind that's managed to wiggle its way through the patched walls again. Just when you think the day might settle into some kind of slow, semi-bearable rhythm, there's a bang at the door. Not a knock. A bang. You both freeze. Nobody knocks like that unless something's wrong. The door creaks open, and standing there soaked, red-faced, and breathing like she just ran from the next village is Agnes. Clara's girl, she pants. Went into labor last night. Something's wrong. You're already up before she finishes the sentence. There's no discussion. No delay. You grab your cloak, shove your feet into half-dry boots, and follow her out into the sleet. The ground is a mush of mud, manure, and half-frozen straw. Your boots suck at the earth like it's trying to keep you from moving forward, but your legs know where to go. Clara's cottage is near the edge of the village. When you get there, the door is already ajar. Inside, it's sweltering. A pot of herbs bubbles over the fire, filling the room with thick, bitter steam. You can barely see through it at first. Then your eyes adjust. There's the girl, maybe 15, 16 at most, curled on a mat near the hearth, face drenched in sweat, breathing fast. Her aunt kneels nearby, pale and silent, clearly overwhelmed. And then there's Maud, the village midwife, the one whose hands have delivered more babies than anyone can count, even if she can't count past 20 without removing her shoes. About time, Maud snaps, not even looking up. Water, towels, knife. You know the drill. You nod and get moving. And just like that, your role in this village shifts from firewood hauler to birthing assistant. You feed the fire. You hang the kettle. You clean cloths using snow from outside, warm just enough to stop it from freezing someone's skin. Maud barks instructions like a military commander. You follow without hesitation. Hours pass. Maybe 4, maybe 6. The labor goes on and on and on. The girl screams, then sobs, then goes quiet. That's when you start to worry. Maud doesn't blink. She leans in, mutters something to herself, and calls for more hot water. The aunt faints, literally just tips over like a sack of flour. You catch her before she cracks her head and roll her gently to the side. No one has time to deal with that right now. Finally, long past the point where you thought this would end, Maud tenses. It's coming. You grip the girl's hand. She crushes your fingers. Then, with one long, awful push, it's out. A baby. But it's not crying. Maud acts fast. Clears the mouth. Rubs the chest. Thumps the back. Still nothing. You hold your breath. Then finally, a high, thin wail. Weak, but real. Alive. Maud exhales through her nose, like someone just told her taxes were canceled. She wraps the baby in a cloth and places it next to the girl, who's too exhausted to even look. You sit back, legs shaking. You didn't give birth, and you still feel like your body just climbed a mountain. Someone hands you a mug of something warm. You drink it without asking what's in it. Historians still debate how much medieval midwives actually understood. Some say it was guesswork, folklore, and herbal superstition. Others argue that midwives like Maud passed down centuries of practical, hard-won knowledge. You're pretty sure Maud could teach a modern surgeon a thing or two if she felt like it, which she wouldn't. As you help clean up, you notice something odd. Maud pulls out a pouch and sprinkles ashes in a bowl of water. To keep away the shadow, she mutters. You want to ask what that means, but her tone says, not now. Later, over stew in her kitchen, Maud tells you quietly, some babies come too early. Some come with something chasing them. The ash keeps it away. You don't laugh. You don't scoff. You just nod. Because in this village, if Maud says it, you believe it. By the time you trudge home, it's late afternoon. The sleet has eased, replaced by that cold, damp fog that turns every breath into smoke. You open the door, soaked to your knees. Your cousin looks up from the fire. Well? You shrug. Mother and baby are both breathing. Maud didn't kill me. He grins. Then you win the day? You peel off your boots. They slop when they hit the floor. Your hands are red. Your back aches. And your stomach growls louder than the pigs in the pen outside. But you feel good. Not rich. Not safe. But good. Because today, you help someone live. And in a world where that's never guaranteed, that's everything. You don't remember falling asleep. But when the church bell starts to ring, you know exactly where you are. You're on the floor, back aching, head propped on a bundle of firewood you'd meant to carry in earlier. The smell of soot and sweat still clings to your cloak. Someone, probably your cousin, snores softly nearby. A baby's breathing rises and falls from the corner where the new mother is resting. It's the kind of sleep that's not really rest, just waiting for something else to go wrong. Then the bell tolls again. You blink, squinting into the dark. That bell isn't for morning mass. It's too soon. And it's not tolling like it should, slow and deep. It's sharp, urgent. You throw your cloak over your shoulders and stumble to your feet. The cold bites your toes, even through wool wrappings. Outside, the wind howls against the shutters, rattling the thin wooden frame like it wants to come inside. Your cousin stirs. Is it morning already? No, you mutter. Something's wrong. You're already unlatching the door when he groans and sits up, rubbing his face. Outside, lanterns bob along the path toward the chapel. Shadows move in clusters, voices muffled under scarves and heavy cloaks. The ground crunches under your feet last night's, frost layered with a dusting of new snow, thin enough to look soft, sharp enough to cut your fingers if you fell. You follow the trail of villagers, each wrapped in layers like walking bundles of rags. No one's talking, not really, just soft murmurs. A few heads nod at you in passing, eyes wide with tired suspicion. When you reach the chapel, the doors open and candlelight spills out like it's trying to hold back the dark. You step inside. The air is thick with heat, sweat, and damp wool. Father Bertram stands at the front, pale and hunched like a coat rack that's lost its coat. He's clutching the pulpit like he might fall over. Henry, he says, voice quivering. It's Henry, the Thatcher. He's been taken by a sickness. A few gasps. One person crosses themselves. Another mutters something about evil spirits. You feel your stomach tighten. Henry's the man who patched your roof last spring. Bit of a loner. Always smelled like smoke and pine tar, but strong, quiet, the type that just gets on with it. For him to fall ill in the middle of winter, It doesn't sit right. Father Bertram explains. The reeve found him this morning or maybe late last night. Time gets slippery these days, wandering behind his own cottage barefoot in the snow, muttering in a voice that wasn't his own. He said the trees were whispering, Bertram whispers. Said the cold was watching. You glance at your cousin, who's now arrived and is standing beside you, eyebrows raised. People around you shift uneasily. These aren't the superstitious townsfolk you hear about in folk tales. They're your neighbors, hard men and women, people who know suffering like it's a family member. But still, that phrase, the cold was watching. It hits different. Maud's already halfway to the door. She's rolling her sleeves as she walks. The woman never stops moving. Ill go, she says, but ill need help. Every head turns. Again. And yes, they look at you. Of course. You don't even sigh this time. You just follow. Henry's house is a squat, crooked thing at the edge of the village, the kind of place that looks like it might decide to collapse any minute, but always stubbornly stays standing. Smoke is pouring out of the chimney. Too much. The inside must be roasting. You push the door open and walk into a wall of heat and something worse, the smell of sweat, sour milk, wet fur, sickness. Henry's lying on the ground, half off his straw mat, limbs twitching. He's soaked through, the blankets around him dark with sweat. His mouth moves like he's trying to speak, but only breath comes out. Maud's already unpacking herbs from her pouch, muttering ingredients and instructions. Brew, birch bark. That pot? Yes. Fill it. Use the water from the corner, not the bucket. That one's frozen solid. Keep the fire high, but don't let the smoke get thick. You obey. Even your fingers feel slow in the heat. Henry jerks suddenly, eyes snapping open. They're here, he rasps. They live in the wind. You freeze. Maud doesn't. Hold him down, she says. If he kicks, hell break his leg. You kneel beside him and take his arm. His skin's hot, not fever hot, oven hot. His lips are cracked. He starts mumbling in a language you don't recognize. Maybe Latin. Maybe not. You think he's possessed. You ask before thinking. Maud snorts. I think he's burning from the inside out, and his brain's boiling over. But you believe what you want. Historians still argue whether people in your era believed in literal spirits causing illness, or whether those were just metaphors. You're not sure it matters. When a man starts whispering in a dead tongue and staring past your face like something's behind you, metaphor doesn't feel strong enough. Maud forces a spoonful of elderflower broth into Henry's mouth. He gags but swallows. You stoke the fire, adjust the damp cloths, check the pot, and then silence. Not peace, just silence. Henry slips into unconsciousness, twitching slightly, breath ragged but slowing. Maud finally leans back. He might live, she says, eyes unreadable. He might not. You nod, not sure what else to do. She adds, almost like she's talking to herself. Some winters, they bring things with them. Sickness that clings to the wind. Cold that worms into your bones and doesn't leave. Sometimes it skips a few years. Then it comes back meaner. You've heard stories like that. So has everyone else. They're passed around at night like bread. The winter that stole half the village. The year the snow never melted. The time someone saw figures walking across the frozen pond in the dark. And the next day, their cow was dead. Science will explain these things someday, maybe. Or maybe it won't. You wrap Henry in another layer of cloth. You toss salt in the corner, just in case. And you step out into the pale morning. The snow is falling again. quiet flakes, gentle, but somehow colder. You walk past the chapel, where Bertram is still praying, past the well, where someone's hung a bundle of herbs, rosemary and garlic from the handle, back through the village, which has gone strangely still. No chickens, no dogs barking, just smoke rising from chimneys, like gray ghosts. You push open the door to your home. Your cousin looks up. Is he? Still breathing, you say. Then you sit by the hearth. You add wood. The fire crackles, but it feels like winter just got longer. You wake up coughing. Not a deep, hacking cough, more like a dry scratch. The kind that reminds you how cold the air is, even inside. The fire's burned low again. A soft orange glow hugs the edges of the stones, but it's not enough to chase off the creeping frost. Your cousin's still asleep, sprawled out like someone who's fought bears in his dreams and lost. You sit up, wrap your cloak tighter, and glance out the window. Snow. Again. But something's different today. There's movement outside. More than usual. A few neighbors walking fast, heads down. 2 boys carrying firewood, not joking like they normally do. And then you hear it a low hum. Not a sound, exactly, but a kind of buzz in the air, like everyone's holding their breath. You open the door and step outside. Cold slaps your face like an old rival. Across the way, old Wren is knocking on doors, unusual for her. She's usually busy scolding chickens or arguing with her own shadow. When she sees you, she waves you over. Henry's gotten worse, she says, before you can ask. Maud's asking for more hands. You nod, instinctively, already stepping off the porch. But Wren shakes her head. No, not for him. There's another. That stops you. A girl, she adds. Young, visiting her aunt. Came 2 days ago from the next village. Started shivering last night. Now she's burning up. You stare at her. Henry was strange enough, but this feels like something else. You find Maud outside the chapel, surrounded by a half circle of villagers. Her arms are crossed. Her expression? Grim, with a side of frustration. She's got the same look in her eyes, she tells the group. Same heat. Same muttering. This isn't regular fever. This is something else. A man in the back mutters, It's the cold. Another chimes in, It's the spirits. We should burn yarrow, mark the doors. And just like that, the whispers start. You feel it rising, not panic yet, but close. Fear always spreads faster than fire in the cold. You see it in the way people step back, in how no one wants to touch anything or anyone. Maud raises her voice. We don't know what it is, but we know it's not solved by blaming ghosts. Could be bad air, someone says. She sighs. Or lice. Or mold. Or the fact that we're all living in damp wooden boxes with no ventilation and eating dried turnips. You try not to smile. That's Maud for you. Still, the unease lingers. Historians still debate whether outbreaks like this were understood as contagious or just cursed. To you, it feels like both. The idea of a plague was still forming in your century, not yet germ theory, not yet modern medicine. Just a slow awareness that something could move from body to body without anyone seeing it. You volunteer to help again. Not out of bravery. Honestly, you're too tired to feel anything but numb. But Maud needs someone steady. And the others? They're already lighting charms. The girl is small, maybe 10, with cheeks that should be pink from the cold, but are instead blotchy and pale. She's lying in her aunt's straw bed, shaking hard enough to rattle the wooden frame. Maud gets to work. You copy her movements. Brew a mixture of bark, and clove. Boil linen. Hang wet herbs by the hearth. She's not as far gone as Henry, Maud murmurs. But if this keeps spreading, we'll need more than tea and prayers. Her words hang in the air like smoke. You glance down at the girl. Her lips are moving, barely. You lean in closer. She's whispering something about snowmen. They're not made of snow, she breathes. They walk when you sleep. You feel every hair on your neck stand up. Maud hears it too. She doesn't comment. She just wrings out another cloth and places it gently on the girl's head. Later, outside, you and Maud stand in silence. The sky's gone white. Not from snow, from fog. A heavy, choking fog that eats sound. The trees at the edge of the village vanish into it like they were never there. I don't like this, Maud mutters. You don't either. You remember something your grandmother once said, that the worst winters aren't the coldest. They're the quiet ones. The ones where nothing moves. The ones where the sky forgets to turn blue. This winter is starting to feel like that. You look around the village. People have stopped gathering. Doors are shut tight. Windows shuttered. Fires burn during the day now, not just at night. And no one, not even the children, are playing. That evening, as you sit by your own hearth again, trying to dry your boots, your cousin finally speaks. What do you think it is? You shrug. Cold. Sickness. Bad luck. He pokes the fire with a stick. You think it's spreading? Already has. He nods slowly, then says something you weren't expecting. If it gets worse, we might need to leave. You look up sharply. Leave? In winter? He meets your gaze. I'm not saying now. Just be ready. You don't respond. But later, lying on your bedroll, you stare at the ceiling and think about that fog rolling in. About Henry muttering about voices. About a little girl dreaming of snowmen that walk. And you wonder how long a village can stay safe when winter itself feels like the enemy. You don't hear the roosters? That's your first clue. Normally, even in this cursed weather, the old birds would be up squawking at nothing. But this morning, nothing but wind. Low, humming wind. The kind that slithers into your ears and nestles there. The kind that makes your bones feel a little older than they did yesterday. You sit up slowly, joints cracking in protest. Your cousin's already stoking the fire, eyes half-lidded, moving like someone running on habit more than energy. He doesn't say a word, just nods toward the table where someone's left a scrap of bread and a few dry peas. Breakfast of champions. You chew silently. Hard bread, softer thoughts. Then a knock at the door. That sound again, always the knock. You open it to find Bertram, snow clinging to his shoulders like ash. He doesn't greet you. Another one, he says. You don't need to ask who. You already know it's someone who was fine yesterday. It's Johanna. Not someone you knew well. She lived near the stream, helped make soap with her older sisters, always smelled faintly of lye and lavender. She was young, strong, cheerful, in that rare way some people manage to be even when everything's broken. Now, she's not smiling, not even conscious. They've brought her to the chapel, laid her out on a spare mat, her hair still wet from the snow, even though no one can remember when she last stepped outside. She was shivering last night, her sister tells you, voice barely there. We thought it was the wind. It's never just the wind. Maud arrives with her bag. It's heavier now. She's added more bottles, more twigs, more root bits. She's desperate. You can tell by how fast she moves, how tightly her jaw is set. Get her legs elevated, she barks. And someone get me warm stones. You go. Because of course you do. Outside, fog still blankets everything. It's thicker than ever. You can't see the stream anymore. The trees have vanished again. Just the sound of the chapel bell ringing, even though no one's pulling the rope. That's not great. You grab 2 stones from the hearth and wrap them in cloth. On your way back, you pass by Thomas's home. The door is marked now. Someone has drawn a circle in ash and salt on the wooden plank. A folk charm. No one admits to doing it, but everyone lets it stay. Historians still debate whether these kinds of protective symbols were official beliefs or just rural improvisations. You don't care what the scholars call it. Around here, people draw circles when things go bad. They always have. Inside the chapel, Johanna's breathing is shallow. Maud presses one hand to her forehead, another to her chest. She's hot, she murmurs, but her fingers are cold. That's not normal. She said anything strange? You ask. Her sister nods. She kept repeating a name, over and over. What name? We couldn't make it out. It wasn't English. It wasn't Latin either. Just sounds. You share a look with Maud. There's a pause in the air. The fire cracks. A log pops. She said it like she knew them, her sister adds. Whoever it was. You stand there, not sure what to say. Not sure what you'd want someone to say if it were you lying there, whispering names of things that don't belong to this world. Instead, you light another candle. It's all you can do. Later, as the light starts to dim, Maud pulls you aside. We're losing control, she says bluntly. People are scared. The sick are growing. And I don't have enough of anything. You don't know what to offer. You're just a body with hands and some patience. We need to make a decision, she continues. Either we try something drastic or we sit and wait. What kind of drastic? You ask. She looks toward the hills, past the fog. There's a convent, she says. A day's walk, maybe 2. They might have supplies, books, something I can use. You blink at her. You want to go now? In this? She doesn't answer, just stares at the fog. You both know it's stupid, but you also know maybe it's the only shot. That night, there's a gathering. Not in the chapel this time. Outside, near the square where the old well sits, half frozen over. Lanterns bob in the dark, casting pale yellow circles on the snow. You huddle with the others, maybe 20 strong now. Everyone's quiet. No shouting, just frost clinging to beards and brows. Bertram speaks first. We've lost Henry. Johanna's failing. The baker can barely breathe. We have to decide what kind of village we are. It's a strange sentence. He goes on. Do we lock down? Cut ourselves off? Burn the homes of the sick? Pray. Send someone out for help. Maud stands beside you. You can feel her heat, her nerves. You raise your hand. Everyone turns. We go, you say. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Someone goes, you correct. To the convent. For answers. For help. No one returns from the hills in winter, someone says. We haven't tried, you reply. It's quiet again. Then Maud steps forward. I'll go, she says, but not alone. She looks at you. Of course she does. You don't even nod. You just breathe in the cold and say, I'll pack. You don't sleep much. You gather what you can, dried meat, 2 skins of water, flint, extra wraps for your feet. Maud gives you a pouch of herbs, a knife, and a look that says she's not sure this will work, but she's going anyway. Your cousin helps you tie your boots. Try not to die, he says. But if you do haunt me gently, you smile, sort of. Don't eat all the turnips while I'm gone. He lifts his hand in a mock oath. Cross my heart. Then the sky turns gray again. and you step into the fog. You don't know what waits in the hills, but whatever it is, you hope it has answers. The cold doesn't let up. By mid-afternoon, it starts pressing in again, thicker, sharper, biting at the corners of the cottage like it's trying to get inside. Even the fire seems unsure of itself, flickering small and nervous. You press your hands closer and wonder how much longer this can go on. The woodpile is down to a few logs, and the kindling, gone. You're back to burning bark and straw, and whatever else doesn't scream when it catches. Then there's a knock at the door. Of course. This time, it's not Bertram. It's Elswith, a widow from 2 cottages down. She's bundled head to toe in wool and fur, with only her nose showing. "Chapel Square," she says. "Tonight? After dark?" You blink. "What for?" She hesitates, then says, "The keeping fire." You pause, not quite trusting your ears. That phrase, it's one you haven't heard since you were a child, just a bedtime story, really. A night when the village gathers around a fire that must never go out until dawn. A fire that keeps the dark from crawling into your bones. You always thought it was superstition. A ritual from a time when people didn't know how to survive winter or explain it. Maud's leading it. Elswith adds, "Bring wood, and anything worth burning." Then she vanishes back into the swirling dusk, like the cold never even let her knock in the first place. That night, you follow the flickering glow toward the chapel square. It's strange seeing people out in the open again. A dozen families, some whole, some missing a few, shuffle in with bundles of branches, dry dung cakes, even broken furniture. You spot an old table leg, someone's wooden spoon collection, and what might have once been part of a bed frame. If it burns, it's welcome. The fire pit is ringed with stones, wider than a cart. It hasn't been used like this in years. Not since the blizzard of '38, when the river froze solid and all the chickens turned to statues overnight. You were too young to remember much, but the old folks still talk about it in that you think this winter is bad kind of tone. Maud stands at the center, holding a long branch like a torch. She looks taller tonight, or maybe it's just the light dancing up the folds of her cloak. The fire's not lit yet, but her presence warms the crowd somehow. "This fire will burn till sunrise," she announces, and no one leaves it alone. Someone mutters about wasting fuel. Someone else hisses, "Shush." Maud raises a hand. "You think this is just for heat?" she says, voice steady. "You felt it. This isn't just a cold wind. Something is sitting on us. Has been for weeks. I don't know if it has a name or a face, or if it just feeds on fear, but I know it can be pushed back." You glance around. No one's laughing. "We keep this fire going," Maud continues. "Not just to stay warm, but to keep the dark where it belongs. Outside." She kneels, touches flint to bark, and a spark jumps. The crowd leans in. The fire catches slowly, twigs first, then straw, then a whoosh of warmth as someone tosses in a broken chair leg. Soon, it's crackling hot, wild, alive. You feel it chase the chill from your cheeks, at least for now. Then the stories begin. Not the usual kind, not saints and kings. These are village stories, old ones. Whispers passed from grandmother to grandchild and kept alive like embers. A man named Will tells of a woman who walked into the woods one winter night and came back with hair white as bone. Never spoke again. Ate only snow. Elswith speaks next. Her voice is quiet but firm. She tells of the tallow man, a spirit made of wax and shadow that melts through doorways when the fire is out. If your hearth goes cold, he slides in under the doorframe. Then a shepherd shares one about a goat that brayed like a baby during a snowstorm, luring people out of their homes one by one. They were never found. It was just a goat, he says, shrugging. But goats don't mimic children. Even Maud offers one about an illness that once swept through another village, far to the east. The people buried their mirrors because they believed the sickness entered through reflections. Historians still argue whether these mirror rituals were symbolic, protective, or just plain fear. But standing there, in the flicker of firelight, you realize no one brought a mirror tonight. Not one. You stare into the fire. The flames dance in patterns you can't quite follow. Shapes that shift just when you think you've seen something. A face? A tree? A pair of eyes? Someone passes around a skin of warmed mead. You take a sip. It's sweet and smoky. Feels like it's chasing the cold straight out of your ribs. For a moment, your fingers stop aching. Your cousin leans over. Remember when we thought all this was nonsense? You smile faintly. Still do. Liar. He's right. You're starting to wonder whether belief matters. Maybe what keeps the dark at bay isn't truth or fiction. Maybe it's just people, gathered close, refusing to give up. Hours pass. A woman sings an old lullaby no one's heard in years. Her voice is cracked, slow, and somehow beautiful. Someone starts drumming on a bucket with a wooden spoon. It's terrible, but everyone claps along anyway. The fire grows taller. Children fall asleep on cloaks. A man and wife huddle, whispering to each other like it's their first night together. Even old Bertram dozes off on a log, hands folded, breathing steady. Then, just before dawn, the flames shift, not blue this time, but gold. A bright flicker, like sunlight. You blink, wondering if it's your eyes. Maud tosses in a final handful of crushed herb sage, you think, and murmurs something. You can't hear the words, but you feel them. You think you hear her say, "Let this be the worst of it." And maybe it is. Because as the horizon softens and the first streak of pale light splits the clouds, the wind slows. Not stops, just quiets. The kind of quiet that doesn't bite. The kind that lets you breathe without flinching. You exhale. And the whole village breathes with you. It's just after sunrise when you notice them. At first, you think it's just your own tracks, circling the house from where you went to check the woodpile. But no, these are bigger, wider apart, deeper, and headed straight toward your door from the northern field, the one no one's been near since harvest ended. You blink. Look again. There's only one set. They come right up to your threshold and stop. You didn't hear anything last night. No knock, no voices. And yet here they are, fresh, crisp, unmistakable footprints in the snow. And no return trail. For a moment, your heart pounds faster than it should. It's probably nothing. A traveler? Someone from another village passing through? But even that thought makes your stomach clench. No one travels during nights like last night. No sane person, anyway. You open the door slowly. There's nothing there. No footprints on the porch. No bundle. No visitor. But then, just under the edge of the wooden sill, tucked into the straw lining, like someone wanted it found, but not noticed too quickly, you spot a small bundle, wrapped in rough wool, damp with frost. You kneel down, careful. It's tied with simple twine. You untie it slowly, half expecting it to be just trash, or maybe something worse. Inside is a dried sprig of vervain. You freeze, not because it's dangerous, it's a herb, used in healing, but because of where and when it's showing up. Maud told you once, vervain was never picked after the first frost. Said it lost its power after that. Dies on the inside, she said. Looks alive but isn't. And yet this one looks preserved, like someone had kept it since summer. But why leave it here? You hold it up to the light, fingers tingling just from contact with the cold. It smells faintly bitter, familiar, earthy. Then behind you, Maud clears her throat. She's already halfway through your gate, boots crunching softly, cheeks red from the wind. You hold the herb up wordlessly, her eyes narrow. Where did you find that? You gesture. By the door. No one knocked. She takes it, turns it slowly between her fingers. This was left on purpose, she says, not dropped. You nod. Could it be a message? She frowns. Maybe. Vervan's used for wounds. Protection. Midwives carry it for luck during childbirth. But leaving it at a door, she shakes her head. That's different. Maybe it's a warning, you say quietly. She doesn't answer. That afternoon, word gets out. People start checking their own doors. A few find nothing. Some claim they saw a shadow in the trees last night, but thought it was a trick of the firelight. Others swear they heard someone humming low and slow, but were too scared to look. You gather at the longhouse before dusk. The warming fire is already lit, its orange glow bouncing off the frost-crusted walls. Even the usually stoic Bertram looks uneasy. I say we track it, he mutters. See where the prints lead. Maud sighs. And if they lead to someone frozen? Someone sick? What then? Bertram shrugs. We ask them why they're creeping around our doors like ghosts. Ellsworth pipes up. Not everything wants to be found. Sometimes leaving a thing alone is the safest kindness. The room goes quiet. You sit with the coin in your pocket, the one you found yesterday by the fence post. You haven't told the others yet. It doesn't feel like the right moment. Not yet. That night, you offer to watch again. You sit close to the fire, eyes on the door, breath steaming gently in the chilled air. It's a strange kind of stillness, not peaceful, exactly, but thick, like the air is holding its breath. And then, you hear it. Not a footstep. A sound like cloth brushing snow. You rise carefully, wrapping your cloak tighter. The door creaks as you push it open. No one. Just the wind, and the long, open dark. You glance to the right and freeze. There's something half buried in snow. Another small bundle. This one wrapped in bark. Inside, 3 acorns, a sliver of flint, and a coin. The coin is old, worn, stamped with a symbol you've never seen a sunburst with an eye in the center. Not Saxon, not Norman, not Roman, not anything from around here. You bring it inside, hand trembling. Maud takes one look and exhales slowly. That's not for us, she says. But they left it. She nods. They did. But not everything left behind is meant to be kept. You don't sleep much that night. No one does. By morning, more bundles have appeared. One at the chapel. One near the old well. All silent. All strange. A pattern begins to form. Every place someone has spoken aloud about their fears, a bundle shows up the next night. It's as if the village is being listened to, not spied on, not threatened, just heard. Maud finally says it. I don't think they're trying to harm us, she murmurs. I think they're watching, waiting, helping, in a way they're allowed. You look around at the others. Helping who? She stares into the fire. Anyone who knows what to look for. That evening, before heading out, you tuck the strange coin back into your pocket. Not because you think it will protect you, but because something in your gut says it's part of something bigger, older. And even if you don't understand it yet, it's part of this winter now. You step into the night. The footprints have melted into the next snowfall, but you can still feel eyes in the dark, not cruel, just ancient and waiting. The dream stays with you, even after you open your eyes. In it, there were frost patterns on every wall, not the ordinary kind, but lines so deliberate they looked like drawings. Some curled into spirals, others resembled letters from a language you didn't know, but somehow understood. One looked like a gate, another like an eye. And just before you woke, you felt something press against your back, not warm, just present. Now, in the waking world, your breath fogs the air as you blink into the dim light of the warming house. You're still wrapped in your cloak, huddled by the embers. Around you, the others sleep. One curled under a deerskin, another with a child on her arm. Someone's snoring faintly, and the air smells like damp wool and old firewood. You rise slowly. Every joint in your back pops like firewood cracking in the flames. Stepping outside, you expect the same gray sky, the same lifeless hush. But something's different. You pause on the threshold. The snow is undisturbed mostly. But there, just beside the entry post, is something that wasn't there last night. It's not a bundle. It's a mark. Etched carefully into the snow, with something sharp, maybe a stick, or the tip of a bone needle, is a perfect circle, split straight through the middle by a single vertical line. It's not large, 6 inches across at most, but it's unmistakable, geometric, intentional. You crouch beside it, heart tapping faster than usual. It is an animal. It isn't the result of dripping snow. Someone meant this. You don't touch it. Not yet. You just stare. Later, you show it to Maud. You wait until the others are busy warming stones and splitting wood. No one else notices the hush in your voice when you call her over. No one sees how her eyes narrow when she bends down to examine it. She says nothing for a long moment. Then, "I've seen this before?" You blink. "Where?" She doesn't answer right away. Her fingers trail just above the symbol, never quite touching. Then she straightens. In a book. Years ago. One of those little ones that traveled from merchant to merchant, more legend than lesson. It was full of recipes and drawings and strange Latin scribbles. You lean in. What did it say about the symbol? Her mouth tightens. It sat next to just one phrase, scrawled in the margin, half faded. You wait. She speaks so softly, you almost miss it. Don't let the fire die. That night, you keep the fire bigger. You gather more stones, build the wall higher, redirect the wind with a plank from a broken cart. You even convince Bertram to help, though he grumbles the whole time. "You're turning this place into a shrine," he mutters, lifting a log onto his shoulder. "Maybe that's the point," you say. He raises an eyebrow, but says nothing more. And when the fire's lit, really lit, glowing like a beating heart, the others come. Not all at once. Just a few at first. A girl carrying a bundle of twigs. An old man with a reed whistle. They don't speak much. They just sit, watch, listen. And little by little, the warming house becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a place people want to be. Someone sets a pot of broth near the edge to warm. Someone else hangs wet socks to dry on a string tied between posts. A boy begins tracing shapes into the dirt with a stick, copies of the symbol you found, but made childishly, with loops and swirls. No one tells him to stop. The next morning, another mark appears not near the door this time, but in the center of the path leading toward the chapel. This one isn't a circle. It's a triangle. Inside it, a small dot. You gather Maud again. She squats beside it, lips pressed into a line. What does this one mean? You ask. She exhales. Protection, maybe, or direction. Historians still argue whether shapes like these were prayers or maps or warnings. Sometimes all three. You rub your arms against the cold. Feels like someone's trying to talk to us. Maud nods slowly, and we're finally listening. But not everyone is at ease. Elswith, wrapped in her dark green shawl, corners you near the edge of the village. You see what's happening, don't you? She says, voice low. They're luring us in, making us comfortable. You tilt your head. Who is they? She doesn't answer directly. Instead, she looks toward the forest. When things start showing up in the night, she says, and no one can say where they come from, that's not help. That's a test. A test of what? Of how easily we trust. You want to argue. You want to say it's just symbols in the snow and old stories and people looking for meaning in a long winter. But some part of you deep down doesn't disagree. That evening, you stand at the edge of the firelight, watching the last few villagers shuffle home. The sky above is velvet black, speckled with more stars than you can count. You take a breath. Then another. The air is still. And then, just as you're about to go inside, you spot movement at the tree line. A shape. Human. Standing perfectly still. They're far enough away to be a shadow, but not so far that your skin doesn't react. The hairs on your neck lift. Your mouth goes dry. You don't call out. You just wait. And the figure, like it knows, raises a hand. Not waving. Not beckoning. It forms a shape, a circle, using thumb and fingers, held toward the fire. Then, it lowers its arm and disappears back into the trees. You don't sleep that night. Neither does Maud. You sit across from each other by the fire, speaking in whispers too low for the children to hear. What do they want? You ask. I think, she says slowly, they want us to survive. You frown. Why would anyone help strangers like this? Maybe we're not strangers to them. She looks into the flames. Or maybe we're just the ones still listening. You've never paid much attention to how snow piles up on rooftops. But this morning, as you rub your eyes and step into the pale hush of dawn, something about it strikes you. Every roof in the village bears the same odd signature. A neat line of melted snow running right down the center. It's subtle, but unmistakable. Like each home is exhaling quietly, stubbornly into the cold. Yours is no different. You press your hand to the outside wall. The wood feels cold, but not frozen. It holds warmth somewhere inside, however faint. It reminds you of breath on a mirror there, but always vanishing too soon. You shake the sleep from your bones and move toward the path that leads to the longhouse. The wind is different this morning. It isn't the kind that slices not yet, but there's a weight to it, a warning in its edge. It stirs the treetops without rustling the branches. The livestock shift uneasily. One of the goats gives a dry, anxious bleat. You see Maud, standing near the gate, wrapped tight in a gray shawl, her eyes scanning the sky. She doesn't speak when you approach, just nods once, then turns to lead you down the trail toward the far edge of the woods. There, by the fallen tree, the same one where that bundle appeared weeks ago, she kneels and unwraps a square of linen. Inside are dried herbs, vervain again, a sliver of birch bark, and a few juniper berries dark as ink. You crouch beside her. What is this for? You whisper. Her voice is low and even, a reply. A gift for a gift. She places the bundle gently at the base of the tree, presses one hand into the snow beside it, and closes her eyes. You do the same. You don't know why. It just feels right. Back in the village, people work in a strange, quiet urgency. Doors are sealed tighter, chimneys scraped clean, cloth is stuffed between cracks in the wood. The blacksmith, who hasn't spoken to anyone in 3 days, emerges to help stack firewood without a word. You're clearing the path by the animal pens when the first snowflake lands on your cheek. It's dry, sharp. You look up. The sky is pewter, thick, unmoving. Another flake, then 10, then too many to count. Within minutes, the world turns white. The wind rises, not in a scream, but a slow, growing murmur, like a crowd gathering outside the walls of your mind. Bertram yells from across the square, "Get everyone inside!" You drop your tools and run. Inside the warming house, it's barely controlled chaos. Cloaks are hung on hooks near the door, dripping and stiff. Children are already huddled under blankets. Someone has brought a pot of weak onion broth, and it simmers at the edge of the fire, scenting the air with something that almost resembles comfort. You throw 2 more logs onto the fire and nudge the coals with a stick. The heat licks your face, driving back the sting of cold in your bones. Maud arrives shortly after, her arms full of supplies. Dried apples, fat, 2 extra cloaks. She doesn't speak, just nods at you and begins organizing the shelves like she's preparing for a siege. You sit against the wall, legs outstretched, cloak pulled around you. The fire crackles. The stone walls trap the warmth now, holding it in. Slowly, the house quiets. The storm screams outside, but in here, people begin to breathe again. And then someone notices the symbol. It's etched faintly into the inside of the door, near the base, where the frost never settles. A circle with 6 rays. In the center, an open hand. Maud is the first to react. She crouches, traces a finger above it, never touching, and exhales. They were here. You swallow hard. When? Before the storm. Maybe just now. Maybe before we got inside. There are no footsteps, no open windows, no creaks in the floorboards. And yet it's there, etched like a calling card, not threatening, not demanding, just present. Someone whispers, "What does it mean?" Maud doesn't answer right away, but you do. It means we're not alone. That night, as the storm rages louder than it has all winter, the fire never dies. People take turns feeding it. Even the smallest children sit quietly nearby, passing kindling to each other like sacred objects. You stand at the doorway, watching the snow swirl outside. The world has disappeared beyond the porch, all white and wind. You can't see the trees. You can't see the fences. But you feel something watching back, not with malice, just curiosity, ancient attention. You wonder who left the mark. You wonder why they haven't come closer, or if they have. Maybe the warmth itself is the answer. Maybe it's always been a signal, a beacon. You step back inside, let the door close behind you, and throw 1 more log on the fire. The sparks leap high, and for a moment, just a moment, the shadows on the wall seem to shift like figures standing still, watching, waiting, listening. The storm doesn't just pass. It lingers like a guest who wasn't invited, but also refuses to leave. For 2 long, whitewashed days, the sky presses down with that pale, choking stillness, and the wind whispers between the thatch as if it's trying to remember your name. Time begins to soften at the edges. It's hard to tell morning from evening, hunger from habit, sleep from staring blankly at the dancing shadows on the wall. The fire glows without speaking. Even the children have stopped asking when they can go outside. You sit near the hearth, elbows on knees, cloak bundled around your shoulders like a shell. Maud is nearby, shelling dried peas into a clay bowl one by one, her movements slow and repetitive. Each tiny plunk into the bowl is somehow louder than the wind. Occasionally, someone coughs. Someone else rolls over. The goats bleat once, and then remember it's still winter, still snow, still silence. By midday on the second day, the storm begins to fade. Not all at once, just less. The wind stops shaking the shutters. The howling softens to a low breath. Light filters in through the cracks above the lintel, like someone's finally remembered to open a window in the sky. Bertram's the first to step outside. He opens the door cautiously, as if expecting it to bite him. Snow pours in around his boots. He shivers, grunts, then waves to the others. "It's stopped," he mutters, voice hoarse from disuse. Everyone stirs. The villagers begin filing out, blinking like moles, into a world that transforms smoother, whiter, stranger. Drifts have buried the fences. Trees are heavy with icing. The barn's roof has dipped slightly under the weight, and someone gasps when they realize the old kiln chimney has collapsed entirely. But there's no damage to people. Not today. You help clear the path to the well. The handle is frozen, but Bertram and two boys from the northern edge manage to break the ice. Water bubbles up like a miracle. Someone starts laughing. You don't know why, but soon others join in. It's not joy, exactly. It's release. A reminder that even after being buried alive by weather, people will still find a reason to laugh about goat dung or someone's missing boot. That night, you try to sleep in your own home again. The hearth fire is thin, but it's enough. Maud gave you a jar of rendered goose fat to help with the chill. You smear it around the base of the window frame to seal the drafts, and it works surprisingly well, or you're too tired to care. You pull your blanket up past your chin, trying not to think about the spiral symbol still tucked in your pouch. But you do think about it. You think about the spiral and the mark carved on the door and the symbols the boy had drawn absent-mindedly in the ash. And you think about the footprints, bare footprints. In the morning, you return to the goat pen with a pail of scraps. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hesitate before opening the gate. Like something might be waiting on the other side, just out of sight. But when you step in, it's only the goats. Half asleep, tails twitching, one of them licking a patch of frost off the inside of its shelter wall. And then you see it, the footprints again. Not fresh exactly, but recent. You crouch low, your breath fogging against your own collar. The toes are small, not childlike, but delicate. There's no tread, no shoe, just the clear arch of a bare foot pressed into snow that shouldn't still be warm enough to hold shape. And beside the print, half buried under a drift, another object. A stone. You scoop it up carefully. It's smoother than the first, a deeper black. And this time, there's no symbol. It's blank. But it's warm. Still warm. You walk it to Maud's door. She answers quickly, as if she's been expecting you. Her hair is tied back, and she's wearing a thick woolen shawl that smells faintly of lavender and smoke. You show her the stone without saying anything. She nods slowly. "They're not leaving, are they?" you ask. "I don't think they ever were," she replies. What do they want? She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she reaches into the folds of her shawl and produces a small wooden disc. It's carved with a series of concentric rings, 4 deep ones, then a shallow fifth that's almost too faint to see. She presses the disc into your hand. Protection? You guess? No, she says. Permission. You look up. To do what? To remember, she whispers. That night, a light appears again. Not a torch, not a lantern, just a soft floating glow hovering at the edge of the woods. Not flickering, not moving. Like someone holding still just far enough that you'll question whether they're real at all. You don't call out to it. You just stare until your eyes sting. And then you go back inside, place both stones on your shelf next to the fire, and sit down beside them. You don't know what's coming next. But you know this much now. Surviving the coldest nights isn't just about staying warm. It's about staying noticed, and about noticing in return. Morning arrives softer than expected. No crashing wind, no pelting snow, just the hush of a sky unsure if it's supposed to shine yet. The gray outside your window looks like someone smudged the world with ash. You're not sure it's dawn, but it's not night anymore either. You blink against the low light, groggy and disoriented. But there's something different. Your limbs feel heavier, but not in a bad way, like you've actually slept, like your body finally remembered how. The fire in your hearth is still glowing, not raging, not dead, just enough to prove it survived the night right alongside you. And you remember the stew, just a pinch of the mooncap mushrooms. You'd stirred them in, half doubting the magic, half hoping for it. Whatever they did, if they did anything at all, the sleep you got was the kind you hadn't felt in years. And for once, your dreams hadn't chased you down. You sit up slowly, letting the blanket slip from your shoulders, and stretch. Your back pops. Your knees complain. But your breath comes steady. You're not anxious. Not today. The cold air kisses your nose as you shuffle toward the door. Wrap your cloak around your shoulders and step outside. The village is waking up with you. Across the snowy courtyard, a boy is scooping ashes from a fire pit. Someone's chopping kindling near the chapel ruins, rhythm sharp and sure. You hear a rooster crow confused, maybe, but trying his best. And further off, a dog barks once, bored already with the morning. You crunch your way toward the root cellar, your breath puffing out in little clouds. It's your turn to check the stores again. You don't mind. It gets you moving, gives you a reason to pretend everything is still routine. The wooden door creaks as you lift it, and the scent inside hits you cool earth. Drying herbs, turnips that should have been eaten last week. You descend the stairs, lantern in hand, boots thudding gently against the packed dirt steps. Inside, the air feels still and calm, like the world's holding its breath. You check the baskets. The potatoes are sprouting, but salvageable. The apples are soft, but not slimy. The cabbages smell sharp enough to clean your sinuses. And then you spot it. The same straw bundle from yesterday. The mooncap mushrooms. Still sitting on the shelf where Maud had left them after inspecting your discovery. You pick them up gently. They feel lighter today. Or maybe you feel heavier. Grounded. Back outside, you walk toward Maud's cottage, bundle in hand. Her window shutters are open, steam curling from her chimney. She sees you coming and meets you at the door before you knock. Sleep better? She asks, a knowing smile twitching at the corner of her mouth. I did, you admit. Best in a while. She steps aside, waves you in. Inside her home, it smells like cloves and pine sap and something baking. You glance at the hearth. A small iron pot bubbles lazily. You hand her the mushroom bundle. I thought you might want these back. She takes it without a word and sets it beside a handful of other bundles, herbs, dried flowers, little jars of oil. Her fingers are stained dark from grinding something. Possibly bark, possibly beetroot. With Maud, it's always a mystery until it ends up in your tea. You dream? She asks as she sits. Yeah, sort of. Walking through woods. Someone was with me. I don't know who. She nods like that's the most normal thing in the world. They don't show you things unless you're quiet enough to see them. You pause. They? She doesn't clarify. Instead, she gestures toward a stool. You sit. She pours you something warm, a tea that smells like hay and cinnamon. There's a reason, she says after a beat. They're called mooncap. Not just because of when they grow, but because they open your head, not break it. Just open it, like a window. Only the brave use them. You hold the cup in both hands, or the desperate. She shrugs. Sometimes that's the same thing. Outside, wind nudges the shutters once, then lets go. You sip the tea. It's bitter at first, then sweet, like bark and honey fighting for control. You think the mushrooms came from them? You ask quietly. Maud doesn't blink. They don't grow themselves. Not where people can find them. Not unless you're meant to. After tea, you walk home slower than usual. Snow is starting to melt, just barely. Patches of mud peek through along the edges of the path. Somewhere, water drips from a roof onto a stack of firewood. The village feels hushed, but not tense. Resting, waiting. You glance toward the woods, again the spot where you'd left the offering bowl. It's gone. Not tipped over, not broken. Just gone. You walk toward it without thinking, boots squishing softly against thawing ground. At the base of the stump where you'd left the bowl, something new waits. A feather. Dark brown, almost black, longer than your hand. Not from any village bird, not one you'd recognize. It glistens slightly, not wet, not oily, but with a strange shimmer, like frost under moonlight. You don't touch it. Not yet. You just kneel beside it. You feel something shift behind you, the way air changes when someone enters a room. But there's no one there. Just the trees. Just the wind. You glance back down. The feather hasn't moved. But it doesn't feel like it's just a feather anymore. It feels like a message. Or a reply. You lift it carefully, cradling it in both hands. It's warm. Not like fire. Like breath. You return home with it tucked inside your cloak. You don't tell anyone, not yet. But when Maud passes you later that day, she pauses, sniffs the air, and simply says, "You've been noticed." And then she keeps walking. You say nothing. You just stand there, holding a feather in your pocket and wondering what winter really means when it's not just snow and soup and sleep. You stare up at the sky. The clouds are parting. And something in you is beginning to wake. The days drift by with a rhythm that feels both new and ancient, as though time in the village has shifted into some slower gear that turns just beneath the frost. You wake up one morning and realize the silence isn't as sharp anymore. It's settled, softer, like the cold has finally made peace with your bones. You start each day with quiet purpose. The little thread Maud gave you stays tied to your window latch, just one loop. Nothing fancy. But somehow, you sleep deeper with it there. No more startling awake in the middle of the night. No more dreams of endless white or footsteps that never catch up. Just calm. Sometimes not even dreams at all. Just rest. You still rise early old habits, frostbitten ones. The sky outside glows with that faint, silvery color you've come to recognize as morning in these parts. And the wind, though still present, hums now instead of howling. You brew your tea slowly, letting the steam fill your lungs like a spell you don't understand, but trust anyway. The village has changed too, not in how it looks, but how it feels. People are still cold, sure. No one's throwing winter festivals. But you hear laughter more often now. Not the hysterical kind, not the nervous kind, just honest little chuckles over burnt porridge or runaway goats. That's rare in a season like this. It's like something invisible has loosened the knots inside everyone's chest. Even the children, the ones who used to huddle near their mothers or keep their eyes on the ground, have started daring each other to run just a little farther across the snow. They throw icy pine cones. They make crude snow people with rocks for eyes. The old crank who lives near the mill shouted at them the other day, but there was no venom in it. Just noise for the sake of tradition. You notice it all, because now you're watching more closely. One afternoon, you find yourself back near the edge of the woods, not the deep part where the spiral log waits, but the open glade where the sun sometimes touches the snow. You don't remember planning to come here. Your feet brought you. There's a patch of earth, strangely bare of snow, right beneath a bent birch tree. You kneel beside it, press your hand against the damp soil. It's cold, but not frozen, almost like it's breathing. You take off your glove, and gently, instinctively, you press the feather into the soil, the same one you found all those days ago on the stump. You don't say anything. You don't need to. The gesture is enough. You pat the earth once, like tucking in a child. And then you rise. You feel no dramatic energy shift, no voice from the sky, just a sense of quiet agreement. That night, the wind returns, but it doesn't feel angry. It feels like something passing through, just checking in. You pull your blanket higher, eyes half closed, and listen as it weaves through the eaves, rattling the shutters like a lullaby with too many verses. The fire crackles once, then goes still. You fall asleep, with your hand resting on the windowsill, just where the thread is tied. And this time, you dream. But it's not like before. You dream of fields not covered in snow, but golden with grain, of voices in song, of tables lined with food, of the same village, but with warm stones instead of frost, smoke from chimneys curling into a spring blue sky. And there in the distance, a figure watching, not close enough to be frightening, not far enough to be forgotten, cloaked, feather tucked behind their ear. They nod, then turn away. You wake up just before dawn, heart still beating fast, though not from fear. Something is changing. You rise, stoke the fire, pour some water into the iron kettle. Your breath fogs the window as you lean toward it, peering into the half-light. There's something outside. At first you think it's just a trick of the wind, a pile of snow blown into a strange shape. But then it moves. A deer. No, not quite. Its shape is wrong. Taller. Leaner. You don't breathe. It turns its head slowly, antlers like frost-covered branches. Its eyes find yours through the window. Not wide or wild calm. Knowing. And then, without sound, it steps backward and vanishes into the trees. Later that morning, you tell Maud what you saw. You expect her to laugh, or at least give you a look that says, sleep less, drink more water. But she doesn't. She just nods, stirring something in a pot that smells like nettles and something smokier. They visit when things begin to grow, she says softly, even when the snow hasn't noticed yet. You frown, but nothing's growing. It's still winter. Maud shrugs. Not everything grows above the ground. She ladles the tea into a cup, pushes it toward you. Besides, she adds, almost absent-mindedly, you planted something, didn't you? You blink. The feather. The glade. You nod slowly. I did. She smiles, soft and strange. Then it'll know you meant it. That afternoon, someone knocks at your door, rare enough during winter. It's the carpenter's daughter, cheeks red, hands shaking. There's something under our floor, she blurts. Something humming. You pull on your coat, follow her, and somehow you're not surprised. Not when you find a circle of melted frost around their hearth. Not when you kneel and press your palm to the stone. Not when it hums, warm and alive. Like something old waking up. Like something buried for a very long time. And suddenly, you understand something you hadn't before. Winter isn't the opposite of life. It's what life hides inside. Until it's ready, the snow begins to retreat. Not in grand gestures, but in shy, cautious inches. A drip here, a trickle there. And then suddenly, the tips of green push up through the crusted white, like timid scouts checking if the world is safe again. You squint at the pale shoots, unsure whether to trust them. But they're real. They shimmer with promise, even as the wind hisses a reminder that winter hasn't fully left yet. You move through your daily chores a little faster now, a little lighter. The firewood stack is lower than you'd like, but it doesn't gnaw at your mind anymore. You split logs, yes, but you don't measure each one like it's a unit of survival. Not anymore. At night, the air still stings, but it's less cruel. Like it's accepted your presence instead of testing it. The thread on your window latch remains, frayed now, but still strong. You run your fingers over it before bed, like a ritual, a thank you, maybe, or a quiet signal. Still here. Your dreams continue, but they've changed shape. No more shadows stretching longer than they should. No more sounds with no source. Now you dream of music pipes and bells and laughter half buried in the snow, of bonfires surrounded by cloaked figures, some human, some not quite. You always wake before the fire dies. And always, you feel warmer than you should. The village is stirring in a new way, not just in routine and spirit. You see people planting little things in pots inside their windows. Old bits of bean or dried bulbs long forgotten. No one says spring. That would be pushing their luck. But they nod more. They smile without being asked to. They hope, even if they don't say it out loud. One morning, Maud finds you at the well, your bucket creaking in the cold. They're here again, she murmurs. You glance up. Who? She tilts her chin toward the woods. Not all visitors knock. You follow her gaze. The trees stand still, ordinary, harmless, but you feel it, like eyes behind bark, like breath under the moss. You nod, say nothing. You've learned not to question the quiet too much. One night, close to dusk, you walk back to the clearing, the one with the stump. Not out of fear, not out of duty, just because. It's still there, still round, still clean. The spiral has deepened on the fallen log nearby, as though someone kept carving when no one was looking. You crouch and trace the lines with your fingertip. It's warm again, not burning, just alive. Something rustles behind you. You don't startle. You just turn. A boy stands there, maybe 10, maybe not human. Hard to say. His skin has the sheen of bark, and his hair falls like pine needles. His eyes are dark, round, still. You don't speak, neither does he, but he holds out his hand. In it, a single pine cone. You reach for it, slowly. It's lighter than you expected, dry, hollowed out, but tucked inside a sliver of fabric. The same rough weave as the thread you keep on your window. You blink. Has gone. Just gone. You walk home in the twilight, hands trembling, but not from cold. You place the pine cone on your shelf beside the feather. You light your hearth with the last good log. You sit beside it until only embers remain. And then, as you slip under the blanket, you whisper something you didn't plan. I'm ready. You don't know what for. But you mean it. And the wind outside hums in reply. And now, the snow falls quieter. The cold, once biting, has softened into something familiar, something patient. You feel it settling outside, not as an enemy pressing against your walls, but as a hush, wrapping the world in a final stillness before spring begins its quiet work. Inside, the fire flickers low, casting long shadows that stretch but never threaten. Your blanket is tucked just right. The hearth clicks as it cools, and your breathing slows to match the rhythm of the room, steady, even, safe. The village sleeps. So do the trees. Even the wind has curled itself into a corner and closed its eyes. You've made it through the longest nights, and though the frost might linger a little while longer, it can't stop the thaw that's already begun, not just in the earth, but in you. The thread on your window sways gently, like it's dreaming too. And in this quiet moment, nothing is asked of you. There are no tasks to finish, no mysteries to solve, only stillness, only rest. So let your thoughts drift like snowflakes, landing softly on nothing at all. Let the story melt away, leaving only warmth behind. And if your eyes are still open, they don't need to be. You're home. You're safe. You're warm. Good night. End of story. Sweet dreams.